that was just, and so there were those moments. Moments sometimes where someone was confrontational towards me. I remember Tom Horn at some convention. Ken Allen had just lost the treasurer's position to Tim Wilson by a vote or a half a vote or whatever. And I remember, and Ken being angry at me for engineering. Now let me be very clear, just like the role of the election, people who run the elections, they actually usually don't vote. I have never voted in an election which I was actually a voting member of. But somehow there's this perception that the person, because I did believe, and I do believe no matter who is running, that we should have contested elections. Case in point, I'm closest to James Creedle, probably of any person in the NA over the years, and James had more candidates who ran against him than anybody else. Tom Horn, who I was very much in favor of his candidacy, but I was determined to get someone to run against Tom Horn. But I remember Ken Allen going, and Tom Horn trying to facilitate the discussion. I was like, and Tom literally took my arm and tried to undo it, and they automatically were like, it was a great lesson in body posture and body language. But then later on, Ken, I saw Ken like a couple of years later, and we had some good times. And those are the most salient memories for me in terms of the organization.
Do you think, and I'll ask you too this, Regis, although you've been to fewer conventions, but do you think that over the years conventions have changed? Do you think the atmosphere, the dynamics, or are they just the same?
I think they've changed. I think the organization has changed. We've gotten older. I'm always amazed at, it's nice that there's so many people who are around for so long, and there are a lot of people who are not here. We have not done as good a job of getting new faces to the table consistently. And so I'm one of those folks who really did love some of those old-time battles. And there seem to be far fewer and far in between. I don't like battle for the sake of battle, but I do miss that, sometimes that passion. Those people who were dedicated to a vote or dedicated to an issue. And I think what has changed, on the other hand, but because we have been, those of us who have been around for a long time, with that long time being 5 years or 20 years, there is that family connection. And so no matter what happened 5 or 10 years ago, it is good to see you because I won't see you again until next year. And so that there is an ability to place old political struggles, sometimes personal struggles, and put them on one level and say that as a whole, though, that someone else may be part of this larger thing called NABWMT, and as such, it is really good to connect with that person again. And that, I think, only comes with maturity. It doesn't happen overnight. It can happen from a convention to a convention, but it happens over the period of time. I think, I'll say that.
Regis, have you noticed any changes over the years?
Well,
conventions you've been to?
The convention, I started going in 1996, and for the most part, they've all been relatively the same for me, in that I'm aware of what happened in the past due to doing the history project and just my knowledge of talking to people. So I wasn't involved in the organization when it was much more political and, just had things that would happen like I forget which convention it was, but I remember John Bush telling me about the one where it was, what was the one where, help me with this, there was a name for it where the song that John Bush had created, because of the
Onions.
Orchids and Onions.
Boston, the hotel.
Yeah, like I wasn't around for a lot of the stuff like that had happened. So I wish I had been to experience that firsthand. But the organization just, I guess all of the conventions that I've attended have had in common these great workshops where you learn a lot of stuff. The family reunion factor, the talent show, a lot of things that have stayed the same, but I haven't seen this great political activism in the organization in the time that I've been involved, that I've been familiar with from doing the history project.
Do any workshops stand out in particular in your mind?
Well, for me, just always going to the White Caucus and the combined caucus afterwards, I always love attending that, just to hear what people have to say. And that one in particular, I remember one year I attended a singles caucus, and they had a couple of caucuses at the same time, which they haven't had every year, and I thought that was very interesting, very supportive environment. Some of the many speeches over the years, I mean, the one that James Creedle gave today was just amazing. I mean, like the one I had mentioned earlier that Pete Boykin had given really affected me.
Gavin, you wanted to add something?
No, as was mentioned earlier after this discussion, or I know it was discussed yesterday, I think that as we get older, and as there's a new reality that this organization is grappling with in terms of that leadership is not coming from chapters anymore. So there's kind of how we grapple with leadership and how we define leadership and how we develop leadership on a national level. I think that's changing. I think one of the memories for me of going to convention was a place to hone leadership skills. To not only engage in sometimes rigorous debate and to align yourself with other people, but there was a place that going to the 2 or 3 days of board meetings, where there's a place that you learned how organizations work. And since I have not been to those board meetings in a long time, the first part of the convention, I'm not sure how that translates into actions that happen later on in the week and what happens in between, the work that happens in between conventions. But I do think the organization is still grappling with how we reposition ourselves as a national organization, and I think how that will all turn out is yet to be known. Although I must say that I feel very inspired by the leadership of Wendell and Paul. We have press releases against a war. It is good. And whether you're even for or against the war, the nice thing is that we're doing things externally. And I hope that we go back to a period of time. There was an argument in '88, I guess, but a segment of the organization that said that we were focusing so much on the politics and external stuff. And I heard some people say, well, we got to focus on the internal stuff before we can do the outside, which to a certain degree is obviously relevant. Hopefully that we're getting more to a global perspective, because it is not the sole cause for, I think, declining membership that's happened. I do think there's a factor that if we are so focused on what's happening with us internally, it is hard to attract newer people, and the only people who we really are going to attract are people who may have a more social desires for coming into the organization. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. I love a good party as much as the next person. But if all we stand for, if all we were attracting is people for that element, I want to meet a boyfriend, or I want to go to a nice party, because our voice is not being heard other than that being a place for us to meet, then I think it does impact the organization and impacts the dialogue that happens within the organization. So,
let me ask you a couple of general questions, and I'll ask them, and you can alternate or interconnect. How has being a member of this organization affected or changed your life?
Well, I can go first. I don't know where my life would have been without this organization. Men of All Colors Together Philadelphia and the National Association of Black and White Men Together has probably done more to shape my life than any other, I can definitely say, it's done more to shape my life than any other organization I've ever been involved with. I have grown so much as a person just from being involved with the local chapter as well as the national. As I had said before, I had met some of my best friends through the organization and as well as my partner, and just what I've learned and just the many things just about life and living and just the realities of the fact that we live in a world that is unfortunately divided by color and I guess it's kind of hard for me to explain, but just it's really shaped me as a person. It's I've come out with the support of this organization. I mean, at this point in my life, I am completely out, and I wasn't there. You know, I wasn't even close before I joined this group. It has become my family, and still is my family to this day.
It's hard for me to imagine where my life would be if it wasn't for the organization. Back in first of all, it helped me get into different living situations. I have been roommates with 3 or 4 folks through the course of the organization. Over the course, as recently as 5 years ago, James Friedel, I met the organization. I was roommates with. It accelerated my involvement with HIV/AIDS. Unfortunately, I came involved with HIV/AIDS because through the minority project, which was a good thing, but I started going to the church because of a breakup that I had, and I was shattered, emotionally shattered from the breakup, and a good friend of mine, Bobby Smith, said, we need to go to church and get that. Because I met the person who I broke my heart for the organization, I may not have gone to that church at that time. Going to that church at that time, I started getting involved with HIV/AIDS work. And because of the involvement with HIV work, it has broadened my horizons, but allowed me to assume some leadership positions across the country and in local communities, from getting up before crowded people, and not just now within the gay community, but working with the Department of Public Health and talking about HIV vaccine studies. Would some of those things have happened had it not been for NABWT? Perhaps. But NABWT and local chapters were definitely facilitators of that process. In the organization early on, one of the things that attracted me to NABWT was it was a place for leadership development. And I'm very grateful to you, Doug, and the Charles Stewarts, and the James Friedels, and the John Bushes, the Phil Wilsons, Colin Gibson, who all helped, who took me aside, said something, chastised me when I need to be chastised. But it's all part of that process of growing and learning. Would I have gotten some of those lessons other places? Perhaps, probably in some cases. But for me, it was a place for me to, come out, to be gay. It was an integral part of my coming out process. Both as a gay man, as a sexual human being, as a leader within the Black and or gay communities.
How do you think, respectively, being a white man, being a Black man, has affected your experiences in the organization?
I think that had I not been a Black man in the organization, in many ways, I think there were some opportunities that I would have missed. In many ways, it was a good placing for me in the right time because I was Black. I remember going to Charles Stewart when the city of West Hollywood had a notorious reputation for anti-carding practices, and and Charles Stewart and I going to meet with the city manager of West Hollywood, and so you have this image of these 2 Black men, talking about that. That was had a great impact both on me as an individual, but I think also on the whole dynamics of how carding practices have changed in West Hollywood to the extent that they have. I'm sorry, repeat the question one more time.
How do you think being a Black man, as opposed to being a white man, I guess, has affected your experiences in the organization?
And also, to be honest, I think also being 20 years old when I first got involved with the organization, and kind of and being sexual, being somewhat new, and being played a key role. I remember John Bush at a board meeting in 86. I think we were talking about who is going to be a leader and blah 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 blah. And and John said something acknowledging my leadership, but he said, "But you are perceived as a sexual object as well." And it wasn't that and actually he was really quite impressed with me doing the work I was doing, but it was also, but you are a sexual object in the organization, and making me aware that you have this issue, but that's something that he was aware of and that other folks look to me as. The funny thing, this is what I say this, not that this was, and every black gay man who I've said this to is reasonable enough. There have been so many white men in the organization, especially in the early 80s, who were as busy as any of the black men were. And to me, the telltale sign of the organization that the black men seem to get labeled with reputation.
You mean as busy sexually?
Yeah, busy sexually. Whereas there are certain white men who are very dear friends of mine to this day, who were as busy. But I remember being in one room, I won't mention his name since he just called me, wished me happy birthday, and he lives around the corner from me, more or less. But I was in a room with people, so I know who Doug knows what I'm talking about. And that was for your benefit too, Doug. But it hit me, I was in a room and we were all just talking, or several of us were talking, and we all realized that everyone in this room had been with this one guy. He's not a sexual predator. He was, he's attractive, and he's all this stuff. And I was thinking, Boyfriend doesn't have a reputation, and Lord knows if anyone should have a reputation, he should have at that time, and to a certain degree should still at this time. And I think when I say this to many people are not in agreement, so I'm not sure how that dynamic works out. But it seems that the black men in the organization who have been busier out there get their reputation. I also even see it in terms of like the talent show with the exception of last year with Dell and Michael from Milwaukee. It's commonplace for black men to be. I've never done that because especially now I'm too fat, but it's commonplace for black men to parade themselves scantily clad every single year that God has given us a thing. And that is part of the cultural norm of the organization. Last year was notable that Dell didn't do it, nor did Michael, and Michael wasn't there. But
last night.
Yeah. So you don't see that, and so how does that impact my images of the black man organization? I'm still working on all that stuff. But I remember. I really am not the cutest dancer in town, so I don't think I'd get up there and try to go up there and try to have people put dollars in my G-string or my underwear or whatever. But it's something that I've always just been aware of, something that I chose not to do in a very public, a public place, and in part because of that. And anyone in the organization wants to see me in my underwear or less than if you didn't do it by now, you won't do it now because now I'm just freaking. But it's but yeah, I mean that has it changed it, yeah.
What about being a white man? How's that affected you?
I guess for me, because I'm white, I will never understand what it's like to be, I guess, rejected for a job because I'm black or Asian or Indian. I will never experience the prejudices firsthand because of my skin color. So I guess being in the organization, it's not something that I came in with. In other words, with these discriminations as part of my life. It's something that I've learned that other people have gone through. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is just attending the workshops and attending the different events has made me sensitive to things that I wouldn't have understood otherwise. Like, for instance, years ago when I worked on a newspaper, there would be people who would turn in stories and describe so-and-so as a black man when there was absolutely no reason to do that. He was a man just like anybody else, the person in the story. I guess there was nothing in the story that there was a reason to point that out. So it's made me I guess, more, I'm trying to think of the best word, understanding to what people of color experience in their lives, but because I'm white, I won't understand it firsthand. So I guess in a way, I'm learning about all this stuff, but I'm looking at it from the outside.
Well, how have you each, if you have, noticed any change in race relations since you've been in the organization, both in society and in the organization?
I think the organization mirrors, always mirrors society. There is more of an interest in race relations because of sexual attraction. But when there was, I think we're talking about when the heyday of the 80s, when NAB, when she was, I think there were discussions of race relations. You know, there was talking about racism outside of the gay community. Those dialogues were happening at levels, not necessarily in the old Reagan era-esque, but if you went to organizations which were really focused on race relations, looking at progressive organizations, those discussions were happening there, reflected on a different level, but still within the same discussion with NABWMT. Race relations, I think, within the organization and in society, there's a feeling to a certain degree that there's a certain amount of getting overness, that there has been a lot of successes. And I think to be clear, we should also celebrate and acknowledge that there have been some successes. I'm not one of those who said we can't acknowledge the success because there's a lot of work to do. I think we can and should acknowledge both. The challenge of society is to really acknowledge both. And I think it also happens within the organization that we need to be very clear that there have been great strides within the organization. And actually, well, there's a different tempo of the organization, actually. And there's been some great strides. There's a lot of things we can go, a long way we can go. I made the comment in a workshop earlier today, which was wonderfully done by Preston Schumacher, and talk about all these images of black men and how black folks are perceived, and minus the fact that they're closed. And I guess part of the premise of the workshop and the discussion was going on about, and this is how society views black folks and black men, etc., and all that kind of stuff. And this is, and I want to say, I heard someone say, this is, why people, black folks, they're so poor, so it's just a job for them. But then it also hits me that I know, members of the organization who subscribe to websites or have porn or whatever, which have in many cases equally offensive views of black men. And I don't say it disparagingly, but it still says that it's still for me cute that we can, and it's important for us to look at society and say, hey, this is what's going on in society. But the challenge is to also look at our own hearts and our own minds to say, this is the role I play in it. This is when I want to be objectified, and this is in the role, and this is maybe the consequence of me being objectified in a certain way. Conversely, I think it's for members who are not black in this instance, to look at their role in ways they objectify black men or blacks in general, and to have that kind of discussion. I'm not sure where the discussion leads, and it is not necessary. It is not made to make people feel bad about the choices that they're making or that they've made. I do think that an issue of how society objectifies blacks or black men is meaningless unless we're willing to look at our own actions. And if we can't, what does that say? And when we can't do that in this organization, when there's a vested interest in that dialogue, that should give us some insights into the difficulties society as a whole will have that. And if we can't have that discussion here, we really can't, talk too much about changing society, because then it'll just become, as Louis Groove says, just empty sediment. And that is not to say to other folks that you guys throw away all your, take off your Yahoo groups and all your black inches or whatever, but I also think at some point the question needs to be called as to what that does to people who we claim to love. And for those of us, myself included, who have at times wanted to be objectified, what is the toll at the end of the day? And I think, and so in terms of race relation, I think we need to really talk about what makes a healthy black man, what makes a healthy organization, and to look at some of those issues and what roles we play. So I hope I didn't take too much of a left turn that last comment.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
How have you noticed, if you have, race relations change in society or in the organization since you've been a member of the organization?
I think it's kind of interesting. I see two things going on, at least in society. For one thing, I feel that there seems to be, like at least in the gay community, you're slowly starting to see more of an integration of minorities. Like, for instance, if you open up some of the gay magazines in New York, you will see pictures of African Americans more, but they're still far and few between. There's still, most of the time, it's mostly all male, all white. I think at the same time in society, the whole notion of racism just slowly, I mean, I've noticed in my lifetime, has slowly kind of gone covert in a way. Just, yeah, on the surface, we're all nice and happy and we all want to get along, but things like the racial views of Ku Klux Klan and others who are segregationists, that's kind of gone underneath. And I think it's very much still there, but I just feel that the trouble with dealing with it now is, how do you deal with something when it's not actively, I guess, rearing its ugly head? And I guess that's one thing that I see as a problem for the national organization, because discrimination still goes on, prejudice still goes on. It's not as overt as the bar discrimination of the early 1980s and before, but it still happens.
How have you seen AIDS change this organization? Obviously, Gavin, having been here much longer, has probably seen a lot more.
In the very best sense, I think it helped galvanize the organization to activism at a time when there was not a lot of activism on a national scale of looking at HIV in gay communities of color. I think that, and particularly actually within the organization, looking at HIV in terms of black gay men and their partners. I think when you look at what was done in Memphis with the workshops, I mean, actually, the whole fact of the test was created organically out of work that was being done in Memphis and in New York, in San Francisco and in Los Angeles, that it impacted the organization to respond and to be actually proactive in many ways, more so than it had been in any other thing, with the exception of some of the racism, the carding policies, the anti-discrimination response, the anti-discrimination response of the organization. There was a challenge that was laid out, and people were actually courageously at that. I think also part of the schism was that HIV became a real